about this? How about three questions? What's the most prominent quality of beingness that's here for you now? Presence, peace, connectedness, stillness, love, openness, acceptance, and wherever it goes in your system, whatever words are there. So that's the first question. The second question is, what's the loudest arising right now? And to use Joe's favorite poem, I'll give a couple lines from Joe's favorite poem. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression of meanness. Welcome and entertain them all, because they have been sent as guides from beyond. What are your kind of loudest guests that are here now? What is your loudest guest that's here now that we just label as a part? That's the second question. And the third question is, what would be like this is you've chosen for this hour and a half to be together for the 4 or 5 of us to be together today. What would be the richest thing you could get from today? What would be the most meaningful thing for you? And then we'll all try to see if we can give you that gift or support that happening for you. Inga, would you start us off?
Sure. Yeah, the most prominent qualities of being. There's a vast, I mean, a really unlimited, spacious awareness. And there is also a deep silence, a safety, an openness, and a well-being. There's really a deep sense of well-being. And the loudest part is probably a part that is worried. I have a different group going on that starts a little bit later, and the group seems to be falling apart. And that part is saying, well, I should go there, I should. It's afraid of missing out. It's afraid of not being liked, not being loved, being excluded from the group. And that might be, if I check in different parts, but they are very close together. So that is up. And the third question, what would be most nourishing or most helpful? Or yeah, I'm just curious. Is it? It's hard to tell. I don't really have expectations. I mean, I know that these groups are always nourishing, and it's because of the shared experience, and just the time that we are here together, hearing other people share about what's going on, about their parts and their self, how self shows up. Yeah, just
Maybe you just told us.
Yeah,
Maybe that's it. Just for your system, the nourishment of being in this exploration with friends and hearing of their parts and how self is moving in them, and probably finding a resonance in your system for what's shared by others, that connectedness, maybe even the sense of what that worried part is concerned about losing some in the other group, the sense of the connectedness, the being part of the group, the enjoyment of resting in that. How am I doing? What am I missing, Inga?
no, that's great. So a lot of my parts are really afraid of being excluded, feeling rejected, abandoned. And so they're longing for love, they're longing for connection, and they're longing for safety.
Nice.
And it's so I just want to say this whole work is really feels like such a game changer, to ask my parts, hey, what are you really longing for? Yeah. And to see that it's here.
Mm, yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Inga.
Thank you. And
When we hear Inga say that her parts are really longing for love, connection, and safety, we relate to that. Her parts really longing for love, connection, and safety. What is it that your parts are really longing for? Maybe it's 3 words like that. Maybe it's 1 word. Maybe it's a dozen words. Descriptives. What's really being longed for? And then Inga's system's been playing with the edge, finding much of that here now, starting to find more of it is just here in her intrinsic nature. There's love here, that there's connection here, and that there's safety here. And such a gift that she was describing of as the 4 of us are being in this together. Like we're right now, does it feel like self is just your square? As you look at the Zoom, is it just your square? Is it just Eli's square? Eli's self, Joe's self, Inga's self, and Sid's self? Or is there a sense of, oh wait, is self really, is it myself? Is safety just mine, this connectedness, this love, or is self something that is just kind of inclusive? We're tuning in to something, this beingness of self. How does, I love what Inga's pointing to, the nurturance she finds in being in a group, whatever that is, the connectedness, the sense of belonging. Like what really is belonging? Connect with belonging. What does that give us? What do we find there? Perhaps this wider, broader sense of self. And what's the richness of that as we find what our parts are longing for all of us? Maybe it's like what your words are that your parts are really longing for. Again, Linga's love, connection, and safety. What are yours? And then this nurturance. Is it perhaps easier for that to be found?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. She just
Could
texted
we
me.
uh, ask her if she can join us tomorrow? Feels like with the diving in here. Um, and is there more access to that? Can we find maybe more fullness or more nurturance that Inga describes? As a group, is it different when we meet as a group? What's different? There's a sense of, yeah, what's different for you as a group? Maybe you get to touch it now, or maybe there are other groups that when you're with, maybe if you're with a partner or you're in a Dick Schwartz workshop in IFS and the field of self just feels so full, or you're with one of these people we're describing, you're with a Byron Katie, a Rupert, an Eckhart, or you're just immersed in Rumi's work. Thank you, Inga. Joe, what's for you?
So there's a feeling of ease and peace and spaciousness. And there's two parts that are equal. Uh, there's a feeling of there's something wrong with me part. There's this like a low feeling, which I'm beginning to understand this been there for a long time, and I've kind of just busied myself out of that feeling and not recognized it and not given it any space for such a long time. But I'm finding that feeling very present a lot of the time. And then equally, there's a fixer part that is coming up and just trying to fix that and get rid of it, and for it not to be there, and for that not to be right, and for not to be the way that I should be feeling. And I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm almost bouncing between the three places at the moment, which is a kind of bit exhausting. Um,
So wait, let's
and
just
this
pause. Let's
low,
pause with that for
sorry.
a minute. Like these three places that something seems to move from. Wow, there's self here. There's an ease, a peace, and a spaciousness here. Maybe notice what in the relation between these three. Is that like the background? Just notice that for all of us as we hear Jo describe her system, these three places. How do we make sense of that in our own system? What's our version of that? This self, the ease, the peace, the spaciousness. And then there's a part that has a problem. There's a part that's like that's something's wrong with me. Maybe it's a critic. It's something's wrong with me. And there's a low feeling there. This is how I was hearing the part that you were describing. Then there was another part that was like, oh, that really is a problem. We need to do something about it. We need to do something about it. So can we all like sense of polarities in our system that we're hearing in Joe's, like a part, another one that, there's this attention. We don't want this to be here. We need to fix this or change it. How do we find tension in our system right now? And then are we able to be aware of these two parts simultaneously? The ones, Joe, in your system that has the tension. And that's the fourth tipping point of effortless IFS, being able to be aware of multiple parts simultaneously. Just notice if we can have that awareness. And then we shift down to the fifth tipping point, which is aware of the background as well as aware of the beingness, this ease, this peace and spaciousness. Can we be aware of that and also the parts? And then the fifth tipping point is the sense that the parts get to like soak in it, that they're not alone, that they're being held, loved, welcomed, to use our guest house image, being welcomed home. What are you finding, Joe?
Yeah, that was I felt a shift then when you said that. I think sometimes I get set, I can quite easily get blended with one of those parts, whether I'm in fix it mood or low mood. And I'm trying to do more of that and just sit into that space. And when you took us through that, then I kind of felt like a opening up. I felt those two parts just opening up into that spacious awareness. I'm feeling that peace and ease.
Right. And so let's focus in on, Joe, what you just shared there for all of us, that the little move from being a little blended with a part. We all know this when we're a little blended with a part. We hear Joe's parts, the ones that I'm doing something wrong, and then this fix it part. But whatever it is for you that you might be a little blended with right now, or that you often blend with if you do. And then Joe described a little move that happened, an opening up, a move of opening up. And this is just one way that I offer it through EIFS, but there are all these different ways of opening up, right? This was just the sense of if we can see the two parts simultaneously, that's something. And often to do that, we have to zoom out. We have to find some spaciousness to be able to see that. And that can be, notice if that works in your system, or if not, what does. Because we're really interested in what works in your system when there's blendedness. Because for all of us, how do we suffer? How do you suffer? It's like, what do you mean, Sid? Suffering just happens. No, how do you suffer? Because this beingness, this self, in Joe's system, this ease, this peace and spaciousness, there's absolutely no suffering there. There's no suffering in self and beingness in its very nature. And in this EIFS and EIFS model, it only comes from blending with parts. That's how suffering occurs. There'll still be pain, but there's no suffering unless we blend. And so notice, like, how do you find suffering in your system? If you can see this, that it's something that's, it's not, is it possible that it's not the default? That the suffering isn't the default? That it's from blending with a part. And then when that happens, what's your little move that happens with awareness that gives you, that opens, in Joe's description, it opens up. And one way we've been practicing this is just being aware of, if you can be aware of 2 or more parts, it becomes much more difficult to blend, to identify. And then where we went from there is we went to this 5th tipping point, which is where the healing of the parts just gets to happen, where they just get to be welcomed by the ever-present being that's from the guest house that they're entering. You got anything else for us, Joe?
Just one other thing then that came like when that opened up, there was just a feeling of relief, kind of like, and that I could almost see those parts kind of dissolve, and just kind of drop away. I'm sure that they will be back, but it was in that instance that there was a sense of relief and a falling away of those parts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I?
Oh. Yeah. Oh, what you got, Inga?
You always say when there's something bubbling, we can come in real quick, and I have to just
absolutely
start coming in because I get text messages from Sharon. I said, well, I'm going to bring that up. And I see those different parts inside of me. And so great what you just brought up, like seeing the different parts. Like one is like, I have to speak up for my friend. And another one's like, no, don't do that. So it's great to have this. And I know that it's helpful for me to say that out aloud. To be able to see, okay, those are parts, and to be present again. So that's all that I wanted to do. And thank you for allowing me that. Sorry, Eli.
Absolutely. I mean, what is it? Really, the first tipping point in effortless EIFS is the celebration of everything that arises in us. And this is why I love the labeling them as parts. Like, really, the celebrating, and then Joe's guest house, the welcoming. Can we really have a welcoming of, oh, but this feels really awkward? And it's like, can it be celebrated how life is moving in through us? Like, we're wanting, hey, I'm wanting to look out for my friend. I'm caring for my friend that's uncomfortable, that she's having some discomfort. I'm wanting to help relieve that. And it's like, oh, it's all so beautiful. But like the celebrating of what's here for all of us. Celebrating of our parts. Anything else, Inga?
That's it. Thank you, Sid. Thank you for allowing me to share that.
Yeah. All right, Eli, a lot's kind of come up since we heard from you last from Inga and Joe. What you got for us?
Yeah, thank you both for sharing. And the self, what's most prominent in self, there, as I started to drop in as you were asking that and people were talking, there was a sense, like one of the challenges or one of the things I'm working on in the model is kind of like, can you find the quality that you're, like the longing, right? And I think one of the primary things that's um most challenging is safety. And there seems to be some sort of block, but it's slowly like, and I guess it's another part that's like, oh no, there's not safety here, or maybe there is, maybe there isn't, there's not really. And it's like, and I'm looking, and it's like, not sure. So the part, or so the most prominent part of self, there was a feeling of like fullness. I wouldn't use the word safety, but like fullness, like, oh, this is actually like a full whole experience rather than like a lack, like trying to get something and something's wrong and something's missing and I need to get more and I need to get safe and I need it, etc. So there was a touch, a little like a more of a touch into that. In terms of like prominent parts, um, there's a few that kind of, and they rotate and they come pretty quickly. But that restlessness, or last time I referred to it as like the Tasmanian devil, like the spiraling, spinning, like I need to, like the frantic sort of restlessness. Um, that also can be like lead to avoidance patterns, like, oh, you need to get out of this, you need to get out of whatever, wherever we're just like being with right now, like this is too, like it's too much or it's uncomfortable, and like move away. That comes up a lot, that comes up very, very frequently. um and learning to try to be with that and not see that as like defeat has been a good shift, like has been a very good shift from these discussions, where I was kind of like, oh, if only this part would go away, then you would be, winning. But it keeps coming up, so you keep losing. But it's not really losing; it's just another part but it's not being welcomed, and so that's slowly shifting, and that has been helpful. Um, and what was the third question?
What would be most meaningful for you today?
Um, So I think, like Inga said, like the group it's nourishing in itself to be able to a share, but also the implied acceptance and actually like um love for this work that's behind like all of us being here, really, like, or the celebration, the word that you use, it's in the background, whereas I feel like outside of this forum that work is not very much celebrated, and or maybe even not understood, not accepted. Why are you doing this? What is this? What's the point of this? All that kind of, and then maybe those are external voices and also internal voices, like parts that are like, oh, this is like, what are you doing, like, what are you, like, why are you doing this kind of thing. So like so coming here and like feeling like, oh, it's celebrate, like, look how great this is to be working with your parts, to be incorporating, bringing more acceptance into your life and life in general. Like, what a great thing. So it feels good, rather than sometimes the parts that are criticizing um doing this kind of work.
Beautiful. Thank you. For all of us, how are we right now? Eli just shared so much. What of that were we able to kind of really be with? Say, well, how does this resonate in my system? How are you? Or is there a part that's like, no, I agree with this, or there's something I need to be doing, or just to notice what's here for each of us. We hear this depth that Eli touched on for us. And then just as you're resting in that, we've all done this many times, but something in me is remembering I need to do my housekeeping quickly before we dive, and then we'll dive into what Eli shared. Just what I always have shared, that I'm not a psychotherapist, and this is not the EIFS of psychotherapy. It's friends and colleagues exploring and being responsible for their own journeys. You can just listen to all this lightly. And if you're good with that, if I could get a thumbs up, as you're continuing to be with your good Inga, and then and then just as you're continuing to be with what's inside of you, notice as always there's this recording, and that the audio that you share today um, probably be shared in some electronic form, and wanting to make this available to others, but only my image is being shared. And if at the end of today, if there's anything that you said at all, they're like, whoa, Sid, I'm not comfortable with that, so just let me know at the end of the day and I can just delete it from this. And if I can get a thumbs up that everybody understands that and is good with that, please. And then back to what Eli shared with us. Notice how that resonated for you. I think I'm going to start with this last point of what's meaningful here. And he speaks of this sense of this acceptance that's here, this space that we're sharing, and he even used the word that I used to use, I love using, celebration. A couple of you, I think Joe shared how Byron Katie has touched her deeply, and Inga's like, Byron Katie, I don't think so. But there's something that Byron Katie, since one of today's themes is to see how we can include some of these folks that have been inspirational, that have been helpful along the way into our healing journeys, into how they can be supportive of us. Byron Katie might have been her first or second book. I think it's part of like Loving What Is. And it's to me, it's like the core of her work, loving what is. That's what that means for you, loving what is. Because what we try to do in this effortless IFS is almost work simultaneously on 3 different levels. The first level is what we've been doing, just the relation of self and parts, relation of self and parts. And the second level is what I just call the tipping points, the learning that happens, the updating that happens, the sense of, just like what Inga was sharing and Eli, the sense of finding more and more the qualities that are being sought. What is that I really long for is here. That's an example. That's the 6th and 7th tipping point. It's the learning that happens. But then there's a third level that's happening. And this is really partly from Byron Katie. It's the loving what is. It's like, can it really be a celebration of us just the way we are? Rupert will often call it the pathless path, in just recognizing that it's like here now, this is it. This, as we look at each other, if we look in the screen and see ourselves, like here it is. Could it be that this is perfection? That this is beauty, what we are, this life, just the way it is. And that's part of the celebration of what is that we're kind of playing with too on that level. So what does that mean to you? The loving what is, and I won't go around and ask this one, but just to notice that like truly accepting and loving what is. Which are Katie's words. Ethan shared some other rich things. He was sharing about, well, what is it that my parts are really looking for? And he said, like, well, I really find that there's some longing for, what are they longing for? Longing for fulfillment. And again, for all of us, what is it that our parts are longing for? For Inga's, it was this love, connection, and safety. What is it that our parts are longing for? And then Elo makes such a subtle discernment here, and that, yes, they're longing for safety, but we really can't find it so much to find the safety. Like, can you relate to that? This idea that, well, you're saying that safety is here in my intrinsic nature. Like, I don't think so. I have lots of parts that are like, that's insanity, right? And just to notice that. And then where Eli went next was like, he had a big but there is, let me tell you what is here. There is there is some fulfillment here. We were noticing, and he was describing this fulfillment that is here. And so could it be that, because in classic EIFS, for example, we start with 8 qualities of self. Like Dick tries to just make this really simple for everyone. It's like calm, connection, clarity, compassion, curiosity, creativity, courage, and confidence. It's like, okay, there we go. It's simple. But then what we find as we could say we sink into each of those, as we sink in, as we really get to know them, that we find, wait a minute, like calm, when to calm, wait, there's peace here. We might have another word for it, peace. As we sink into peace, oh wait, there's stillness here. Oh, there's silence here. As we get to know, it's like they kind of blossom. They seem to blossom into these qualities. And what I find is that there's some of these, like safety and freedom for a lot of us, are ones that it takes a bit of blossoming and sinking in for our systems to start to really know those. And can that be okay? Can be okay that, like right now, wow, I really know, maybe I know peace. I can find peace. I might even be able to find some ok-ness here in self. But when you say safety, I can't, that's just, I can't find that. Is that okay? That it just blossoms that way. And just a quick Sid anecdote that, and I'm trying to find, I have a recording of this, and it was Sid being really upset with Rupert Spera. And I was like, okay, Rupert, yeah, there's some calmness here. And it's like always here. There's a sense of some vibration and some peace here. But come on, what you're talking about, this is just so, this isn't what you were selling. This isn't what you were talking about. And it was just, it just seems to open that way. And it's one of my favorite audios because I was just so earnest about this and I was so disappointed. It was like, no, this isn't what I'm wanting. I'm not wanting just calm. I'm wanting those, word Eli speaking, I want safety. No, I want more than that. I want bliss. I want connectedness. I want love. I want all of that to be here. I just, and one more thing. Okay, that's a lot. Let's just open back up again, and then we'll dive into some more of what our friends might be sharing about this. Eli, you got anything else you'd like to share about any of that?
I think you covered it, and you said I think you made a good distinction of it's more parts that come online that say like if you find safety here, what's gonna happen to all the other like that's a dangerous thing. Like finding safety would be dangerous because that would make, or at least that's what those other parts are saying, like the whole house of cards would fall down and everything would be let in if you really found safety here. And all our guards and all the infrastructure around the protections would, I don't know, they would be inert, or like what, that it's it's like too scary, it's too much, it's too scary even to find the safety.
Oh, okay, let's just speak to that really quickly together. Can anybody relate to that? Like if we start finding ok-ness here or safety here, it's like, yeah, but am I just gonna like step off my balcony? Am I gonna just, drive into traffic? Am I gonna stop taking care of myself? Am I gonna do stupid things? And then what about this body and all this stuff? And IFS addresses that in such a sweet way, which is just in the burdened and unburdened parts. That the parts, they just become unburdened. The fear, the contraction, the grasping, that all goes. But then the parts are still here. And so it still knows how to drive. It's still like, I'm not going to step off the balcony. And so that's on one level. That's just one level of addressing it. And was there, are there parts in you like, no, but that's not it. There's more here.
Um, yeah, so it's not extreme like jumping off a balcony or driving into traffic. It which would be easier to kind of let go of for me. It's more so what happens if you didn't have plans, if you didn't, let's say, have those reminders to do certain things. What happens if you forgot
Yeah.
certain and where these had really seemingly existential consequences earlier in life.
Yes. Same thing. Same thing. Just like the part going to keep us from stepping off the cliff. We also have we all have our planner parts, our to-do parts, the ones that have our list. It's like, well, these things are important. I kind of shop, I work, I do this, I keep up my, I have a calendar, and all these things that, and and I might be blind. I might absolutely be missing something here. I would go to Inga and Joe in just a minute with this, but the what I hear from listening to our friends speak about this, when the ones that are extreme that really become unburdened in this, there's a sense that the parts stay, and that's my experience as well, that the parts don't disappear. And so that the sense of the planner and these other parts, they're still doing their role, but there's just no, it's like the fear's gone. And it's always, I'm not selling anything here. This is just Sid's perspective. What we're really interested in is each of your systems. We're interested in your parts. We're interested in how this makes sense in you, right? How it is opening in you, as we hear Inga describe this sense of this, the self that is just becoming ever present in her system as the background. And it's just this change that's happening in her system. It's like, how is that working with parts that are like, yeah, but how is that working? Eli, any other comments on this before we see what Inga's got? You good? Inga, what do you have for us? What's bubbling for you?
Well, it was so amazing, so great to see the parts coming up in real time, with this those like opposed parts, like both just wanting to be loved and wanting to feel safe. The one's like, oh, I really have to help my friend, and the other one's like, yeah, I don't want to put any pressure here in the meeting or disturb the meeting. And both coming up and seeing and realizing them, and it feels like those parts, or more and more parts, the more they get in contact with self, and maybe not even in contact, but just feeling that safety is here, they get in touch with that. I mean, I could really see how they got in touch with safety is here, and connection is here, and love is here, and okayness. And it was a physical sensation of, ah, I mean, just so good. And when you talked about how it starts with the basic 8 C's, I can see how, I mean, for quite a while from the beginning, I had this, oh, there is awareness is present. Could almost always see that. And then there was almost always some peace shining through. Not always present, but I mean, not always like I'm living in peace, but looking for it, I could, even in turmoil, I mean, when the parts were really up, see, oh, there is some peace also here in the background. And it seems like it's really developing, like it hasn't been for so long. It's just maybe a couple of months, a lot, not that long, that I got in touch with what feels like a current of love. And it's not like overflowing love or something like that, but it's something that when I get quiet and I feel inside, there is almost like the warmth and energy that flows in. And my parts are like, this is what we've been longing for 48 years. I mean, that's really what they are like. And I feel all the EIFS work that I've done with my therapist, it was good and was really helpful. But it's almost like what the parts were really longing for. I don't know, it's like it's here now. Yeah.
So as we hear that sharing from Inga, notice what happens inside of you. Is there a part that's just kind of maybe an understanding part that's making sense of it? It's like, oh, I can follow what she's sharing. And it's just kind of, wow, it's kind of, is there that part? And there's also a resonance as she describes, wow, there's peace here in the background. It's just kind of flowing in. Let me touch that, or what's most like that that's here, or a sense of okayness that's here. And as we hear her describe some of her parts, like, gosh, this is what her parts have really been wanting, is to know self, to know the tangible, visceral presence of self that's here. And as she describes it as a physical experience, how does your system relate to that? How does your system relate to that? And is it like some of your parts know it? Is it some of your parts might touch a piece or an okayness or an ease or a flow that's here, and they might know it viscerally, and others, it feels like it's just some concept that we're talking about today. Some know it, and others, especially ones that are more contracted, right? Like we call exiles, and there's young parts that are more contracted. They still might be like, yeah, there's something going on out there that they're talking about. And maybe there's this okayness, this peace, but I have no idea what that is. I can't really feel it or know it. Anything else you'd like to share, Inga?
Yeah, maybe one more thing. It seems often to me when there's this sense of well-being, like, okay, this moment is just so perfect and there's love. It feels like parts just line up, and they are even parts that I don't experience, or that are not like up or present. And I shared the other day, I have a lot of very young parts that are like pre-verbal, and it was almost, I had an evening of, they came up and they got in touch with love, and they took it in and relaxed and came up again. It was almost like nurturing a baby, like they took it in and came up again, like a wave, and subsided and came up again. It was really, really beautiful. And I saw it this morning too, and in real time, how sometimes parts come in like a thought or so, and they are a little bit like children pulling on my hand. Please pay some attention to me, and just asking for, what do you need? It's almost like it's getting more automatic, that they are telling me, this is what I really need, not just what I want, but this is what I need. And seeing, oh, this is all here already, there is this open connectedness, and there is a safety, a groundedness. It got so quiet, it got so, just calmed down, the mind just calmed down. Yeah.
Children pulling at our hands. We all find that parts, young parts, like, what about me? What I want, pulling at our hands. Maybe these really young parts that Inga's speaking of, that come and go, and there's a sense of the love that nurtures them. Pre-verbal parts. the really young aspects of us. To be held and loved. And then the parts. Isn't it great that the parts let us know? It's like just like your body lets you know you're hungry. These parts let us know, hey, what about me? They grab your hand, maybe they're pulled, maybe they start yelling, maybe parts are having a tantrum, and we'll have another part that'd be like, gosh, that part, if only it would be we'll have like we all know the fixer part that Joe was speaking of, and Eli referred to something like that too. Part that wants to come in and fix it. No, I want to find peace here again. That part's being so loud. The tantrum part, this resistant part. But maybe it's like those parts are just they're trying to grab our hand, and we're just like not hearing them, and so then they start getting louder. What they're looking for, and what is it that they're looking for? As Inga starts to describe, there's this grounded being that's becoming more and more known in my system, and something starts changing as the parts start, we call it updating in IFS, as they start updating, they start recognizing the grounded being is here, that the acceptance is here, that the love is here, that that Inga and Eli were pointing to, some of what we get to, hopefully is like almost like this air that we're in together as we come together in this group, that their systems get to. With the four of us, it just becomes even more dense. This love, this acceptance, this welcoming, the celebration of what is at the parts. Or hopefully our parts are getting to experience some of this, and that there's some rest. There's maybe even a little bit of safety that's found, or fulfillment that's found here. And we're just helping our parts update to recognize that it's here. And for a while, maybe it's louder in the group, but then eventually the parts start to really find that it's here all the time. It's the very nature of what they're arising in. Notice how that is with your system. And that maybe there's a critic that comes up, or an achiever. Oh, we should be doing this more. We should have it be different. We should have more of this. Or a pusher, and those are just parts. We're aware of those parts as well. Notice you might blend a little bit with them when they come up saying something should be different. But then as we're aware of two or more parts at the same time, or we zoom out, or we're just aware of this beautiful constellation of planets, of parts, or the parts that are soaking in our hot tub, the sense of unblending. All right, thank you, Inga. That was so beautiful. Joe, what's happening in your system as we continue this dance together, all of us?
Lots have been happening actually. Very busy parts over the last 20 minutes. Something Eli said about the security not being there. When you said that, Eli, I felt like a physical hurt almost here, and I realized that there's this part that doesn't believe that it's here, and so the security and the love especially, and doesn't realize, doesn't believe that I'm capable even of feeling love, let alone being loved. And it felt really strong, and also like I feel quite emotional actually. I can feel like an emotional part joining the party. Just a fear of, almost like a fear of falling into that and allowing that, because like I have to protect myself, Joe has to protect Joe, and there's a real strong sense of that, a fear of what if that is true, because I think I believe that part of me's believed for so long that I'm not capable of feeling love, and I'm not capable of there's something wrong with me. So those sort of parts have been rising and falling as both Inga and Eli and you said we're talking.
So let's be with that for a minute, Joe, before we go on, because that's just it's we're getting to know the guests in your guest house right now. Listen to the guest house. Like, okay, we have these guests here, these parts. A part that says that maybe you're not capable of this love. It's a part, or a part that says there's something wrong with me. Notice it's been fascinating. I just want to share because I don't want it to feel like we're putting the spotlight on Joe here, as we hear parts that can be hard for our system to hear, right? To say there's something wrong with me. I've been fascinating these last 2 weeks with, sometimes they call it it's like the original attachment wound, or this separateness that comes. And I've been fascinated by, in my system, voices like Joe is pointing to. There's something wrong with me. No matter what it does, it's not good enough. It's not okay. There's something missing. There's something missing. And I've been interviewing some of the people, some of our friends, some people we see on YouTube that I've gotten to know. I was like, so what the hell is this? Why is this still here? Why is this doing like this? And there's even like, sometimes at night it will even contract, and the fear, I'll really feel it, and I'll have to get up and like walk around. It's like, well, this is too much to be in. It's like whatever's beneath here. I just want to share this, that sometimes as we start touching these parts, that it seems like, gosh, I've been doing so great, or like Inga's system, wow, there's this okayness, this peace, this ground of being that's here, and it's like here a lot, or most of the time now, or all the time. And then suddenly it's like, whoa, it touches a terror, or it touches this fear, or it touches a voice like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not okay. It's never going to be okay. It's never going to be, or maybe I'm not capable of love. Some of these things Joe said, we get these voices coming. We all know this in our own flavor of it. And it's so easy for another part to come in and say, hey, this healing work I've been doing for 20 years, this spiritual work, it's just not working. Look at this. This stuff is still, and we notice it's just a part, it's just a helper part, or maybe it's a critic part that comes in. But I'm sharing all of this because I'm wanting to try to normalize this in our system. That as we are this guest house, and it's every morning a new arrival, and that as what we hear from our friends that are kind of like really deep in this, is that this is good news when we're able to start touching these things, because our protective system does their best to kind of cover it up and keep it away. But as our system kind of opens, as it feels safer, we're able to touch more and more of this. And we can hear these voices and see these parts literally. And it's hard. It's like to see these parts that Joe's pointing to. In my system, I still can touch a sense of terror that can come up. And it's like when that is touched, it's like I'm having difficulty finding it as a part, because it feels it's so blended, difficult to see it as a guest. And so my game has been to see if I can really, it opens more and more with that. It's so much easier to see in other systems sometimes than our own. And so I'm just wanting to share that, because I'm not wanting this to feel like, oh, this is Joe's system. I'm wanting to try to make this so ordinary. And so, because it seems, I keep interviewing my friends, and they all have this. Is all, it's very common. It's part of the journey as this opens. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you, Sid. Yeah, because it does sometimes when you're on not just this session, but you're on other sessions, and people are talking about this wonderful bliss awakening, blah 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 blah, and I'm like sat there thinking, that's not my reality, and it just brings up that part again that thinks there's something wrong with me. I'm doing this wrong. Like, yeah. So that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yes. And then, so our game is, we're playing with capacity. We're playing with, Joe, you shared the parts of you were so open in sharing these parts that were here. Are we able to be aware of these parts in our guest house? These parts you shared. Can we really see them? And can they be guests? even this one that says, you're not okay. You know, that's a really hard one to hear, because we have parts that come up and saying, this is a problem. Maybe it's a fixer part, or it's a firefighter. When we hear a part like, you're not okay, you're not okay. Often in my system, a firefighter would come up and be like, okay, that's enough of this. Time to go turn on Netflix and get a piece of pizza. I want to, you know, and my question for you is, when that I'm not okay for all of us, my question for all of us, when parts like that come up, you're really screwing this up. You're really, you know, you're working so hard, it's not working. You're not okay. Or, you know, this okay-ness that Inga's speaking of, it's like, you're never going to get there. I mean, it's like we all know these parts. And I gave up on this journey a lot of times. And I was like, okay, Rupert, I mean, I had a whole lot, Katie, I would spend a lot of time with Katie and a lot of these folks. I was like, I quit, I'm done. And I literally would leave for 6 months, because it would get those parts that would just like, this isn't working. So that's my question for you. Can they be guests in our guest house? These ones that you described, Joe, are we able to have them, even them, as guests here? For all of us, can they be guests? What do you find, Joe?
Yeah, in this moment, yes, I feel, because they've kind of subsided. Uh, it's difficult when they're full on, because I do feel so blended, and they feel so strong. And I think it's because, like I think you mentioned then about I'm really just bringing awareness to them, so they kind of feel they want to be heard, and you know, they want to be felt. So there's almost a like, how much do I go into them? How much do I let them be felt and be heard?
Yeah. Well, and what an interesting question, right? I terms this, how intimate am I with them? And it could be as simple as just that beautiful image Inga shared of like the parts grabbing her hand. It's like they're just parts grabbing her hand, like, you know, no, we're not okay. No, don't you get it? It's not secure here. It's not safe here. Don't you get it? This love thing, we're really not hearing, we're really not feeling it. And these are parts that are just what grabbing your hand. And then it's a question for all of us. How close do we get to them? How this welcoming in the guest house? It might be, yes, you're welcome. Come play, do your thing. But it's not like we have to give them a hug. It's not like we have to be so, you know, it's like, and that's what opens gradually this degree of intimacy with our parts. How intimate we can be with them. This is what we call the eighth tipping point of capacity, intimacy and capacity. And if we push it, what happens, right? If you push yourself, like, no, I have a spiritual achiever, this one that says there's something missing here, I'm just going to get real intimate with. We know what happens. The firefighter comes and says this is too much, or a sense of overwhelm comes. And so really we tune into our own systems to what is that? Can we hold hands with them? Or is it more like we're going for a walk with them and they're 10 feet away? Or do we just see them over the horizon? All right. How are we doing? Good, Joe? And I had this thought to share like maybe a quote from each of our friends that we spoke of. But before I do that, let me just see if anything's bubbling for Eli and Inga. Yeah, Eli.
I loved the sharing there, and how you sort of tied it at the end, where and shared your own experience of like sometimes wanting to give up, or just like, I need to just bail out, because that happens a lot. And that leads me into the question here, where you just like exactly what you just said, which is when you get that backlash, or like how far to go, intimacy, capacity, something I'm really struggling with. And I've mentioned this, I think, in the last session, like there's a lot of pendulum swings of openness, and, you know, like, okay, we're, you know, progress, or feeling like spacious, and then the backlash, like, I got to get out of here, like, you know, and just whatever the mechanism is. And I'm
Yes.
having a hard time with, yeah, and then that spiritual achiever or the fixer is like, okay, now what do I do with that? Or how do I keep pushing forward? And now I'm like, do I not keep pushing forward? And I'm not really sure what to do with that.
Mm. I love that. Just for all of us, when we hear Eli share that, can we all find that? To do with all of this? Do I stop being like, okay, what's next? What is it to do? What's this, the spiritual achiever? Or how do I make sense of this? Because it keeps the pendulum. It's like, okay, we're intimate, and then it's like, holy shit. Then we're gonna like, okay, I need space, or like this is too much. How do we make sense of that in our own system, this pendulum, in being with the healing of our system? It's like, and what are we doing? Like sometimes I speak of this as they're just the two sides of this. One is just the healing of what remains to be healed. And the other side is just getting to know, become more and more intimate with these qualities of beingness, these qualities of self. So do we make sense of this pendulum back and forth? It can be exhausting, right? It really can be exhausting. Like, wow, it's like, wow, with all this, it's open. There's openness, and I'm with all this, and there's a sense of home is here, and the parts are coming home, and everything's being welcomed. And then it's like, yeah, then it's this contraction comes, and this resistance. Okay, here's something. What I want to suggest is that something is found here. Something's found, and it's like I like the word capacity, but there's a sense of for those of us who we've there's we've pushed a lot, we've healed a lot to get to where we are here, and there's often a sense of, well, I just need to keep doing that. But then something kind of learns that this is where the capacity is. This is what it looks like being the guest house. It's like it can all the parts can come in, but those really scary parts, we can just barely stay open and let them be here. And we stay 10 feet away from the scary parts, because if they get closer, we see what happens. You know, something happens. There's the backlash, and the system learns that. But then the really cool thing is, just as self becomes more and more pervasive, as it starts blossoming more and we identify with it more and more, that sense of fulfillment and okayness starts being found in the system, it becomes safer to be with that, with gosh, it's almost like you bring home, I forget, you get a rescue animal. Get a rescue animal from, and call it in the States, you get a rescue animal from a dog that's been abused, and it comes home, right? And it's like, at first, it's just, it'll just bite you if you get close to it, right? It doesn't feel safe. But, you know, a couple months in, the rescue animal starts to get, wow, there's love here. There's safety here. There's okayness. And you're not stupid. You don't go stick your hand close to that animal. You give it its space, and maybe you throw some food in for it. And then eventually it starts to find the safety. And then, you know, 6 months later, you're there petting it in your lap. Something like that seems to happen with our parts. What you got, Eli?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I guess practically it's like I like to use like gas and brake kind of thing. Like I can sense when I'm gassing it a little bit more now, where it's like you're trying to steamroll a little bit of the parts. Like, oh, like I caught a comment of yours in the group that was like, when people are very focused on oneness or realization, there's an element of like, oh, fear will come up, just keep going. And that will be like driving. You wrote like that's like driving with this brake that we don't know that's there. And that very much resonated. You're familiar with the comment that I'm referring to?
Yes, but can I just clarify that might have been that I would never say keep pushing, keep
No,
going,
no,
go
no,
down,
no,
you
no,
know?
no, the opposite. You were saying that people tend to keep pushing
Yes,
past,
exactly.
and they don't realize they're driving with a brake on, but they're trying to go past it. Exactly. And then And when you said that, I was like, that's exactly what's going on for me. And that's where the pendulum keeps swinging back, where I'm like, I just have to go past the fear. And I'm trying to like move through past the fear, but I'm completely dismissing it and thinking back to core wounds. That's actually what, like, that is like the chorus of the chorus wounds that I've had in my life, was like being afraid and being thrown into the situation anyways against my will. And so I'm like doing essentially the system, I'm doing the same thing to my system over.
Wow.
And so now I'm kind of at this point, like, okay, can I bring the fear in and integrate it? But then also, am I still pushing too far, trying to like do everything at the same time? What does pulling off the gas look like? Like, how do you reset, or like when the capacity is met? And I guess maybe I'm like, part of me just wants to share that, and like that it resonated, and that it's helpful, very helpful, because I was basically repeating the same story over and over and over again. But I also, I guess maybe I'm looking for like, practically, is it just like loosening up, bringing in the fear, and just like being with that without trying to change anything?
I think just for all of us, just first notice where you go with what Eli just shared. See if you can find how that's real for you. How this pendulum, this tension, this backlashes, how that's real, and the sense of the pusher, the spiritual achiever. I think I'd like to go to Dick Schwartz on this. It's a classic EIFS. Because where he will say, what heals is self, is beingness. And so where it becomes very interesting, and we're just going to make it's just real simple, is when a part comes up, when any part comes up, what is it being met by? For all of us, what is it being met by? Is it being met by another part? We all know these, our healer parts, our achiever parts. And these parts they're superheroes, right? They've done so much to heal our system, to help us, to find safety for us. But so when a part comes up, is it being met by a part? Or is it being met by self, by this beingness? I don't know if that's helpful. There's a clear discernment there.
Very helpful. That's where I've shifted in the last, few days.
And then notice what usually occurs is that we have parts then come up. It's like, what? If we're not meeting it with part, if I'm not involved as the achiever, as this planner, as this healer, nothing's going to happen. Are we quitting this thing? We often get parts that respond that way to this. And we just notice those. They're awesome. They're so committed to our well-being that are saying this. See if they can be included as well. How's this going for Inga? What's going on for you with this? How you doing? I think the plan, the whole, hey, we'll get to bring in Eckhart and Rumi and Byron Katie and Rupert. It was like we already did. It's like it's either they were like, they're here, the wisdom and their depth is here through, we got Eli, Joe, and Inga. And like, why would we leave Inga, Joe, and Inga and Sid for our friends? It's like, it's so full. We got so much to talk about. We don't, okay, we'll let them come in and join us another time. Inga, what you got?
I like that. Yeah, I have a part that's like, and what about those people that resonate with me, just to say real quick, I found that looking into different, or listening to different teachers, I found two that really just resonate. And I mean, honestly, that I find that the message is more or less all the time the same, but it's what resonates, what is speaking to my system, what came up when I heard the shares, when you know, when I heard you talk about fear, I had this, sometimes at times it's so fear is always is often a very, very difficult thing for my system. There's a lot of contraction and it's a difficult emotion to what it's often when parts carry a lot of shame, it's difficult to be with them. But I had some every now and then there are these moments when a little part comes up, a fear comes up, and it's not immediately taking over. And so there are these moments when I can see the beauty in the fear. And there are moments when I can be really intimate with that fear. It's almost like I'm breathing it in. It feels like that, it's yeah. Often when fear comes up and when it's intense, it's really a part that's grabbing me. And
Yes.
but there are these moments when it's not too intense, and it also seems I love this concept of effortless IFS because it almost seems like there is a learning going on constantly, even between the sessions that we do all the time. And I see that parts seem to have more trust. They don't seem to overwhelm that much. And they specifically sometimes even come up and ask for, hey, is there some safety here? And I was like, oh, this is new. Because they were always looking for something outside. It's almost, there is a learning. I feel like there is a learning going on. Yeah.
What Inga just shared, that my parts carry a lot of shame. They're difficult to be with. We all find that. Some of my parts carry a lot of it. It might not be shame. It might have a different word. And they're difficult to be with. There's a real reality check in that. There's a real compassion for our system in that. We can recognize my parts, some of my parts, a lot of my parts carry shame, carry remnants of trauma, carry a sense of wrongness, carry a grief, a sadness, a not okay-ness, and they're difficult to be with. And then Inga described, and sometimes it's different. Sometimes there is a sense of intimacy with them. There's a sense of seeing their beauty, seeing their innocence. It's almost like they're breathing it in. And then other times, it's really difficult to be with them. Can we sense that spectrum of possibilities, the movement in ourselves? And is it possible that's just okay? It doesn't require a sense of managing these parts. Sometimes it's really difficult to be with them, and other times there's just this intimacy, see the beauty in them. And is it possible that this aspect of healing our system, that so much of it can happen that way? And then, but this is also what I love, that EIFS is meant to complement active practices. It's meant to complement cosmic IFS, somatic experiencing, spiritual practice, whatever helps. Because sometimes parts sometimes they really do, they keep grabbing your arm, grabbing your hand. It's like, no, I want something different. I want, in classic IFS, we do something called direct access. And it's like, I want that. Sometimes parts are one, and it's like beautiful, letting it be complemented. Whatever your parts need, if this is really, it's like I also hope this is like a birthday party, a celebration of your parts, that they really do feel that when we come together in our group, this is about celebrating them, and it's about whatever they need. Like helping them find more of what they're longing for here, but sometimes they might get really stuck and and just need other kinds of interventions and support. It's whatever that looks like. Yay! Like for your parts. Anything else, Inga?
Maybe just one sentence. It's also like what we're doing here. It helps to accept that I don't need to heal the entire system. You know, it's not, it takes the pressure off, and I can see that, you know what, it's okay the way it is. And I feel like that brings more healing than the I have to get somewhere.
What about that? Because I might have, it's very tricky the way we speak of this. Because when I think I was talking to Eli earlier, and I said there's a sense of healing the system and returning and abiding more and more as beingness or being more intimate with it. But then there's a complete other way of seeing this, right? The idea of healing the system, is that self that has an agenda? Is there, because agenda itself just this welcoming, this beingness. So yeah, so I think that was probably off, but I don't know how to speak it yet. It's very tricky. Um, because just there's that other place of like seeing, because self, when you see the beauty of these parts, these in Inga's system, these young parts that have the shame, does self have any sense of, oh wow, we need to heal, we're going to heal these parts, we're going to welcome them home, we're going to help their shame unburden? Like never, no. Self just loves, it just holds, it nurtures, it cares, it accepts, it sees, it celebrates. And so I'm working on that. I'm working on it. I'm working on that. Joe, how's it going?
Yeah, I feel like I've had lots of light bulb moments on this session today. So thank you, everybody. Uh, yeah, just the around the question about what's meeting my parts as they arise, and I think most of the time there's definitely another part meeting that rather than that arriving into self and into awareness. And I loved the analogy of the child, the young part tugging at my hand, and said it really helped how you validated, that part of me that feels that that she's got it wrong and she doesn't know how to do this. That has been really powerful for me, because I kind of, it's also a shameful part that you often don't get the safe space to be able to explore that. So yeah, it's been really great. Thank you.
Yeah. Tricky, isn't it? It's like, because part of this is we're not wanting to share anything that's uncomfortable, and we're wanting to have our system feel so safe and cared for. But then there seems to be something that's of value. Sometimes I call it going into the heart of darkness in Sid. And I'll call like it'll be quite an adventure. I mean, I really do sometimes my Indiana Jones song, and it's like going into the heart of darkness, because it's so I was going to use a curse word to even make it, it's so interesting, because as we get into the heart of darkness, it becomes, and we really recognize it's the heart of love. And it's just it's so cool talking about all of that. But then there's also maybe I'll do that more, because I don't want anyone else to feel like they need to do it because it's scary. But to talk about like what's the fear that's still here in our systems? What's the contractions? What do we not want to be with? Or where do we not find okayness? Or where is there even stress and anxiety? Again, stress and anxiety is not our nature. That's not beingness. That's caused from parts. And it's usually there's a protecting of something. And to really start to see that, and to have it be, to normalize it more, like I hope we did that was my intent when Joe was bringing that up, was to help do that for all of us, and especially when any discomfort in sharing. Um, mm, so it's really helpful. That's helpful for me, Joe, as far as what I point to in here. That sometimes I think it can be helpful to do more disclosure. Uh, Anything else, Joe?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Eli, for closing, you want to see if there's anything there that you got as we come to closure today?
Nothing new. Thank you all.
Yeah. Oh, I hope that, you know, I said this before. It's like just as we notice the gifts that we've gotten from each other today, that we've gotten from each of us, as you kind of look around, the gifts from each of our sharings and how we've resonated with that and perhaps gotten more aware of what's happening in our own system in different ways from hearing the sharings of each other, just as kind of Eli and Inga highlighted at the very beginning. My invitation is if you can get a sense of, wow, the contribution you made through sharing your guest house, sharing what's happening inside of you, which might feel it's very personal and it's, well, this is just my story. But to get a sense of how that touched us and how your parts, how we resonated with your parts as we heard them. Because that's all I'm doing here is resonating with what you guys are sharing. I mean, it's such so deep in my system with that. And the qualities of self you shared, how we resonated with them. I'm sharing this for a couple purposes. One, for any kind of vulnerability in your system to also feel the love and appreciation from all of us for what you shared, for your authenticity, for the beauty of what you are. And then secondly, for the sense of the connectedness, because this is a very lovely thing that can open more and more. At first, it's the easiest part of it is the sense of self, the sense of shared self, shared being. As we start to open to that, to the sense of this field, this connectedness, this love. But then where it gets even more interesting is with our parts, as we start to realize that these parts are, it's kind of like the universal archetypes of Jung, that there's a sense of these parts that arise in me, even the ones that seem most intimate to me and I may be uncomfortable with. It's like, wait a minute, wow, Inga knows that one too. How do you know that? That's Sid's part. How does Inga know that? It's like, it's really cool as it starts to open up more. And so, and speaking of that, Inga, if you have a minute, I wanted to follow up with you with what happened earlier. If you could hang on with me for just a second, and just thank you all so much. And gosh, I just love where we went, and come back soon.
Thank you. Can I ask a really quick question, Sid? Like, I would love to re-listen to this because there was like so many golden nuggets. Like, I wish I was taking notes. How quickly, like, do this go onto YouTube or like where can I access it?
I'd like to put them. I'm trying to make them available on my website, and I'm going to aspire because of that request to have it available within the next day, within the next 2 days on YouTube, and I will send you. And they'll be on this one. It'll be on the Facebook page, but it'll be not on the Facebook page. It'll be on my my web page. But I'll send you the link, Joe.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, thank you, Sid. It was really lovely.
Wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Gosh.
You talked about the self, and like not having an agenda. And I agree. It's kind of this. It's totally okay, but it seems to be a paradox. Almost like, yeah, it's totally okay, and still there is almost as if self wants more self.
Yes, but Yes, but that's what that Inga, like but that there's no contraction there. There's no lack in that.
Right.
It's the love of itself. It's the love of this welcoming, this including, this care. And I'm exploring I mean, I'm fascinated by it because that's the edge that's very similar to the edge that's being explored here. Yeah.
It's like the other day, you know, I was walking and I had this sense of almost like unity. I mean, and it was like it was so clear everything is okay and everything matters. Like every word we speak and every action we take, everything matters so much.
Yes. Yes. And this is what that I'm exploring and what I'm calling the fifth view, the simultaneous awareness of this, the depth of this beingness, along with the full expression of our humanity, of Inga and Sid in this life and time, in this lifetime. And it's I'm in that exploration of that because we don't want because you'll hear some of our non-dual friends will speak of there's no one here, there's nothing happening, and kind of there's nothing that matters. And on one level, we can find that. Like it's like everything is this okayness, is this love, is this beingness on from one perspective. But then there's also just the fullness of life, of this lifetime. So we get to keep you and I will get to keep playing with this as we explore, I think,
Yeah.
in this.
I feel like it's something my mind cannot understand. I can feel it, I can experience it, like everything is totally okay.